we were trying to describe the opportunities, the challenges, and what the regional situation is. And more recently, this paper has been taken by the HESAM group, which is a group of independent scientific experts that provide advice to the UN system on scientific aspects of marine environmental protection. And they are going to come out with a new version, but of course you are all welcome to provide the most relevant and issues that the science is solving time to time. I want to appreciate here the work of our interns and those scientific people like Frank Mueller, Dr. Ho Chu Min, and people that has also vested their efforts in this white paper. Through consultations, we work with contracting parties to see what are the main issues that they want to address as part of the agenda for different environmental issues. As you can see, political will is always being reflected, and as far as I have a memory, this is what is being lacking since I have engagement since 19 years with these environmental issues. But importantly, we last year finalized it, and this is going to be published, the regional strategy and action plan for the evaluation and protection, the key habitats, which are coral reefs, mangroves, and seagrass beds. And it was a cross-cutting issue, the Sargassum, as you can see underneath, and it was scored as the highest in the region. So this is very interesting. And an answer to that, we came out with a regional strategy to be implemented over the next 10 years. And this is, for example, some of the lines of action calls for conduct research on emerging threats and responses, and to come out as indicators with a national Sargassum responses, as Patrick was describing, and also targets for Sargassum response guidelines that we are expected to produce. In addition, for the citizen science, another one of the lessons learned, or also some of the outputs that we have provided, is that we saw that there were so many applications recording citizen science, and the AP Collect, and there was one from the Southern Mississippi University. We have also our own citizen science. So we agree with the colleagues from the Florida International University, with the University of South Florida. And so now we have a unique kind of protocol, and we gave it to our colleague in NOAA that is going to incorporate some of our fields that we were incorporating in our application. So now there is a way for the citizens to record in all the region, because mostly the AP info is just for Florida, even though it's a global, but we are going to together jointly have seminars and webinars around the world. So for governance, I wish to say that, as you all know, we have biennial scientific and technical committee groups that meet to discuss the issues. And this is important because, for example, what was conveyed before and also in Africa, there are national decisions, strategies, and plans that need to be conveyed at these forums, you know. So we, for example, last year, as part of the STAC 8, the Scientific and Technical Committee number 8, there was a call for coordinated actions for Sargassum, cooperate with relevant partners to assess and emerge information and best practices. And also the COP10, which is the meeting that takes place after this meets the Scientific and Technical Committee. And we were also calling for synergies. So this is where all the products of the science, the research are become like a legally binding, and we can come out with this cluster of interconnection between science and policy making. Also, when there are international meetings, UNEP tries to convey the global message to see how we can better support in collaboration with countries, the science communities, and all the stakeholders, the best decisions. In terms of communication, we have been working with networking of different stakeholders involved in communication. And the dream here, and I am making this call for everybody, is that we can have like a common ground for communication where no egos, but mostly thinking on all the region. And so now we are joining efforts with CARFA, IWECO projects, CEP, and we're going to try to incorporate also as much people as possible, like FAO, so we can send a common message to countries. So there is not this kind of contradiction or communication. Fundraising also is part of our strategy, and this is something that we all together here can think of. Now that we have these wonderful groups all together, we can start to fundraise, and everyone and each partner to have different roles. There was originally a communication forum for Sargassum in the past, very active, and I will recognize that this is not as active as now, and this is a conversation that we need to hold with the people from SARGNet to see how we streamline and cooperate more. Of course, sometimes are very specific issues to the convention to be discussed in a small working group, but also we need to kind of see how to better communicate. For the Sargassum outreach, more recently, we are planning, and we invite you to be part of this initiative, decision makers, policy makers, short video, article, and a briefing sheet, and general public, same video, article, and briefing communication, and in collaboration with the stakeholders that I mentioned before. Capacity development is something that I see that we all can work together, because we have not just have systematic regional capacity buildings, or perhaps units, modules, maybe using this virtual media now that we have in this special situation in the world. And for now, if we go to the regional gaps, this is something that I have mentioned before in other conferences, and I am using the same slide because this is a constant, like I will say, tsunami of webinars, meetings, working groups, webinars, and people meeting. Now I have here used the conference last year, but now I was adding also the webinars, and I run out of space, and I say, no, I will leave it like that. But I used to say, for example, it's very difficult for one person that deals with so many topics to keep like 25 days of the year, like just talking about the same topic. Probably we can have a better collaboration, coordination, and to have all the relevant stakeholders. Like we may have perhaps at the site of the colleagues from the International Florida University, and replicate this in our websites, like a calendar of Sargassum, and probably try to streamline and cooperate so we don't keep repeating ourselves, which is very important. For research and monitoring, so what we are considering that is extremely important is the long-term research to answer several of the hypotheses that are still floating in the air. And the important is this link of science and policy interface is extremely important, and to have policies in place, regional policies, and also strategies that we can come out together. And we began to see that there is very possible to have a consortium of academic and research institutions, and I'm going to show you how. We have lessons learned in terms of that, and also it's very important that we don't forget about the indigenous knowledge and community participation. For example, we are starting to work with the potentially with the George Washington University, with 10 scholars that are going to get their master program. So they are going to try to see how they address some of these issues in terms of regulatory frameworks and so on. And this is they are going to implement a project as part of the requisites for graduation, and conducting research, analysis, and evaluation. Now, what is needed for governance? So the question is, we need political will, as we said before. We need political will, and we need leaders as champions. We need leaders in one country, or one minister, or some people that has certain ranking of popularity. So we address resources, because if we don't have resources, there is people that wants to invest for solving this issue, but there are not the financial resources. We need legislations and policy, and I am very happy to hear the presentation from Patrick, because I also heard from our colleagues in Africa that they have plans, action plans, and strategies. So, and as important is to have an intersectoral approach. And so there is this United Nations Environmental Assembly, which is the global agenda for more than 193 countries that needs to talk about these issues. And there was under consideration, I don't see that this is going to probably happen now, because there is still discussion with the modality of meeting that will take place next year in February 2021. And there was perhaps an idea to have a draft resolution on Sargassum, and now They are coming with the idea, some countries, that should be more than sargassum. They should include some other species, invasive species. So these are the type of discussions that the region can take in cooperation with scientists to the global agenda. So finally, I would like to say that we have come out with like a draft plan for consideration in terms of the different aspects that I have been talking, that we can call like components, and perhaps we can come out all together with one proposal for financing. For example, in terms of governance, to have a coordinated management and control of sargassum, memorandums of understanding with the different institutions, strategies, action plans, and policies. But it seems to me like we already have a lot of webinars and workshops and this type of meetings. So it's time to start with action. Because if not, we will keep convening here until 5 years, and then we are not doing more than talking. So we have a need regional coordination for, we need to research, also coordinated research, so that there is a better allocation of resources, because if one university is working in one topic, probably can join resources with the other university, but why to pursue exactly the same in parallel? So we can have guidelines to help partners and people to take decisions, make investments, better management. And I don't want to entertain you more. And also for communication, the websites perhaps to have like a unique place, like a hall, and then we keep also sharing information on the online discussion list. We already talked before that we need to how to streamline and also the distribution map, fact sheets, quarterly newsletters, and more coordination. But as important is as governance is the financial sustainability, and we also need to start thinking to fundraise together, and also to see how there are some investments, tax breaks, some incentives, so people that want to invest has the resources to do so. So what is needed from our side is to update this white paper, and perhaps if HESAMP is not as expedite as we expect, we will call for the collaboration of scientific researchers in the region. And also we want to keep trying to build synergies, cooperation, and joining efforts. We are just open to bring this to the floor, and you can contact contracting parties to take this to the next STAC meeting, Scientific and Technical Group Committee, that is going to meet in March next year. And perhaps we all know it's time that we can draft and endorse a regional strategy and action plan for short, medium, and long-term interventions with all the universities, international organizations. For example, let me show you like clusters of how we work. This is the group of people that we work together. For example, let's see one of the first ovals in yellow. This is one of the clusters of universities, the University of West Indies, University of South Florida, Florida International University, Washington University, etc., etc. And then so we can have these clusters working together, and perhaps these clusters of universities can come out with some outsiders or people like advisors to see how to manage the research on sargassum in a cooperative manner. At the other oval, you see that also there is all this UN that needs to work as one UN, and also, of course, the civil society that should be fully engaged, and not least to say all the NGOs that are so important, like CERMES, and also Canary, and also to involve more people. So basically, this is a call for multi-stakeholder approach, integrated approach, build synergies, and work all together to solve a very important issue that has economical, political, and social dimensions. And of course, we need to solve this problem for the benefit of the local communities and the investments in the region. So we wanted to say that a team is not a group of people who work together. A team is a group of people who trust each other. So we all build trust. I am sure that we can do fantastic things in the region. Thank you so much. And this is the end of my intervention. Thank you, Ileana.
Thank you, Ileana. Thanks for a very thought-provoking presentation. And I loved how you have all of the logos so we can see the institutions, organizations, companies, universities working on the initiatives to address sargassum influxes. I do have a question for you from Frank. First, he wants to thank you for your presentation. He's expressing his interest in working with your office to engage regional indigenous communities in the dialogue with ocean best practices system. So of course I can probably connect you two by email so that you can start this discussion.
Yes, we work very closely with the university and with Frank and Dr. Ho Chi Minh. Yes, of course, we can start to see how potentially we can link specifically with some pilots of people, and we can build like citizen science tools to start engaging with them and building like a stakeholder groups analysis, but certainly we can work and we are highly interested because it's part of our mandate. Thank you, Frank.
Okay, thanks, Ileana. So right now the floor is open for questions to Patrick and Ileana. Feel free to unmute yourself and pose the questions. I'm also keeping track of any questions in the chat box, so feel free to input your questions there as well. Oh, is it that their presentations were so clear you have no queries?
For example, I have heard from some of the colleagues that are attending this meeting that they are trying to invest and try to see the potential options for financing. And because this is a big investment and needs to take place if you are going to collect overseas before it reaches the beaches, and then how to have some type of collective effort in that regard. And for that, so many policies should be in place, because you cannot go to the ocean of one country to collect, for example, sargassum, if you don't have all these legally binding agreements or just way to do things. So these are some questions, for example, that are so interesting.
Yes, I agree. I saw Ligia, I saw you unmute yourself. Do you have a question?
Yeah, well, congratulations, Patrick, Ileana, and everybody. Well, first, nice to see everybody. And I was amazed with the clarity and so organized presentations. My questions here is, where is the private sector? The private sector, well, my experience here in Miami, it's been, let's say Miami is some years behind. However, once these things start coming, we had already 2 or 3 web seminars and live seminars those seminars were organized by the private sector. So that's a very interesting and different way of addressing things. So I just wanted to bring this to the table, because we have people that they have the industry of these big machines that clean the beaches, and we have people that have, you know, the business of putting the booms and all of these kind of things. And of course, we need to have that collaboration and at the same time training. We have been working very hard to grow the P-Collect and to grow the StartNet as well, both things that we run. And getting in collaboration with the private sector is going to be very important, because in order to get the P-Collect working nicely, we need people monitoring or people making kind of commitments, isn't it, to take that picture. So question for Patrick and Ileana and the rest, where do you think and how do you think we really need to engage with the private sector?
Well, thanks for that, Lydia. I think at the national level, our experience in the countries we're working in, which is only obviously a small sample, there is at the national and the subnational levels fairly close connection between the private sector whether those are folks looking for entrepreneurship, folks simply collecting for use in their fields, farmers who are trusting of sargassum, let's put it that way, companies who are doing the liquid fertilizer, and obviously the many that are involved in the removal and disposal. What we're hearing from many is that more coordination is needed, hence the management strategies. And particularly for the entrepreneurs, there are in most of the countries very scarce funds for entrepreneurship. So their private sector engagement is limited by the lack of venture capital, by the lack of micro access grants, lack of equity investment that they can easily access. They say that what is available for small business development, which is really what we would like to see in terms of a socio-economic solution, apart from big corporate. They find that the processes are as expensive to navigate through applications and reviews and documentation that when you get the small amounts of funds, they are really inadequate for the purpose intended. So we've had talks at the ministerial level with ways in which to deal with this, but scarcity of funds, as Ileana pointed out, is a serious barrier to progress and engaging the private sector.
Yeah, may I please? Yes, thank you, Patrick. Excellent points, and I think that he has made a great summary. And also, there are some responses at national level. Let's take, for example, Honduras, where the hotel community acts, but as a response to already the maths already there. So they start to pay people, even here in Jamaica, and the small base, the people gets paid for a full wage on daily basis, like kind of $10 or something to clean the beaches. So they people that is normally working as a fisherman moves to start cleaning the beach. Or for example, Punta Cana Foundation also is allocating resources, and they are building consortiums with people from I think from Israel, and they are trying to work with biogas and some options. But what is impeding all these people to go big to big scale is exactly what is referring Patrick, is the lack of financial resources. That's why we need to have certain, yes, we have the science community, we have the entrepreneurs, we have the need, we have the hotel industry. So we need to build these alliances and try to see how to get either soft loans or just to get some incentives or to get some, even people is talking about the carbon sequestration that is producing. I have talked this with Alison, and we were just thinking how to bring this in a way that some bonds can be buy and be part of policies, national policies. But for that, we need to put in place science to justify these carbon sequestration amounts, the amounts that are coming, the monitoring through the different applications that we are using, science. So it's important that we perhaps start to come out at least with a collective proposal at this point. It seems to me like at this point, webinars, meetings, and talks is just good. But at this point, we need to put our hands together and perhaps to fundraise like a Jeff proposal. We have a lot of brains here, probably not me, but we have a lot of people here that can come and they say, hey, let's do, these are the components, this is what we need to do, that is what we need to pursue. That's the effect that is going to have in the communities and the private sector. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks. I know, Frank, you had something to add along the lines of what Ileana just spoke about. I saw it in the chat. Do you want to say it verbally?
Hello, Ileana, how are you doing? Thanks for the presentation. No, I was just wondering, because we are doing some things, it does seem like a lot of it is organization and doing linking groups, but you had suggested that we take concrete action and less meetings. And so I was wondering if you had anything in mind specifically.
Thank you, Frank. It seems to me like our colleagues from NOAA, which are big supporters always, and the people from CERMES, and the people from the IO Caribe, and the people from UNEP, and the people from FAO, we can have like a work group, not talk group, you know what I mean? So where we, because talk, yeah, we are convinced, we are preaching at the church, you know? So what we need to do is just to come out and to have assignments, for example, to say, you see this aspect, you see this aspect, because we have like a skeleton plan now where we need to address governance issues, that we need to address sustainability and fundraising, communications, and lessons learned, and this and that. So we address, we can knock doors with different people, you know, perhaps Jeff takes time. I mean, we can do it, it will take a lot of time, but this can be like a medium term, but short term, perhaps even addressing the people from the private sector. Because this affects airlines. If we're not COVID here, this will be the issue. This affects, because people now is just looking into the internet. Where is Sargassum? No, I don't go there. You know, this is affecting your hotel. So if people come out with a solution to take Sargassum before it reaches the beaches, but who is going to invest with that? You know, what I was thinking is even to link this with something that is with alternative sources, renewable sources. So these floating boats are not going to be using energy, which is diesel, and can cause other problems. So it seems to me like we have a big opportunity here and a lot of people with great ideas, but we need to act fast, let's say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ileana. There's some discussion going on in the chat. Matt Render from the Rotary, he's strongly recommending that everyone reads the USES guide because it highlights the level of private sector innovation already taking place in the Caribbean. So there are lots of opportunities for exploration. And then, of course, Alison would have mentioned that she's speaking for the private sector. They would love to participate in the management to protect coastal ecosystem and beaches, but they need the support from science and the national and international organizations. So these alliances are needed. And Legia was proposing that having best practices and legal guidelines to exploit the resources are urgently needed. We have a question here from Leah. She's asking what regional strategies can be shared with West Africa and what management issues are unique to the Caribbean? Well, if you want to take that, Ileana or Patrick. Patrick is
yeah, I was given way to Ileana, and because UNEP spanning the Atlantic and certainly with the Abidjan Convention bringing together. But I think from hearing the West African seminar and knowing some colleagues here, one of whom we had at our seminar, our symposium in 2018, that many of the interests, the challenges, and the solutions are exceedingly similar. So I'm not too sure that we're at the point of making much of a distinction at this time. I would certainly say that we certainly need more communication and information exchange on which to determine the comparative advantages and where we can learn from each other a lot more. That is slowly happening, but we certainly need to accelerate that process, maybe through UNEP and other institutional arrangements already in place.
Thank you, Patrick. Ileana, you have anything to add? Or Matt Render in the chat is also echoing Patrick's comment that the language used is very important here, so as not to exclude persons that may not understand the terminologies being used by the scientists. So you have to tailor the communications to suit. Fernando to Ileana. Excellent insights and right to the point. We have great minds here and it's time to awaken the sleeping giant, as we say in Brazil. I would like to suggest to include a subgroup to deal with entrepreneurship opportunities. For instance, I've heard of briquettes made from sargassum during a meeting with African colleagues, and I was fascinated about it. Definitely, there are many opportunities to be considered while we keep working on other aspects of the sargassum community. Thanks to everyone for your contributions. Lagia has expressed her admiration for the CERMES Uses Guide document. Thank you, Lagia. She thinks that we need to study it and use it in our different places and collectively as well. Yes, and the guide also features a directory of different entrepreneurs working on exploring uses. So, you know, their contact information is there for those who are interested in exploring partnerships and synergies. Matt has to jump off to another call, but he's left his information for anyone who's interested in continuing the conversation. So we have about 3 more minutes left in the question and answer section. I know Ileana and Patrick both have to leave pretty shortly. So if you, now is your opportunity to ask 2 final questions before we break out into groups.
I just wish to apologize because my connection went off. Sorry. And I just came back with my telephone. But I would like to say that even though I won't be able to join the discussion now, please count with UNEP and with all the network of stakeholders that you saw that I display. And also these 10 new students that are going to come to work with us. So there is people that really wants to do a change, and please, I appreciate all the efforts of you all together, and let's build alliances. Thank you.
Thank you, Ileana.
And from my side, if there are no other questions, I mean, I would say that, again, we're working with just a small subset of countries, but there's immense interest at the national level, down to the community level by folks from all walks of life in this private sector, public sector, NGOs, whatever. And I think really the coordination, Ileana spoke really about the challenge of coordination, which we're all familiar with across the Caribbean. But even at the national level, we're seeing that these challenges can be pretty immense. So to all colleagues who can assist here, reaching out down to the community level, really engaging folk with your outputs, with your science, and making sure that folks are connected, ensuring that our websites are really informative for the average person, even those in school, to go ahead and find information easily and be able to apply the knowledge. Applying the knowledge mobilization, I think, is one of our key endeavors that we need to cover within the next year. Thank you.
And Shelly, and before I leave, also, since we are going to start with this communication strategy for different stakeholders, we don't want to do this just for from the perspective of UNEP. We want to do it in a cooperative effort. So we are going to be reaching you out. So send a message that makes sense, and perhaps some interviews, let's say to Patrick, to Cesar, to Leah, to whatever, you know, people that really, to Frank, that so people can put their face to perhaps some fishermen, so people can see that this is a collective effort, and to listen from the people that is already trying to make the change. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So if there are no questions now, just want to thank Patrick and Ileana for their very informative and thought-provoking presentations. We appreciated their insight. And now we have lots of food for thought and, of course, some calls to action for how we can actually address the problem and not continue just to talk about it. So I am going to hand over to Leah. She's going to put us in breakout rooms. We have about 40 minutes to discuss questions as it relates to, I'm putting it here on the whiteboard. Of course, you know, our discussion is linked back to the Ocean Best Practices System, So what practices need to be standardized? What methods in your field will benefit from a best practices guide? And today, of course, our discussion is around the management of sargassum. So what best practices as it relates to the management of sargassum need to be standardized? What are the information gaps and what types of best practices can help fill these gaps? Of course, what organizations in your community could endorse a best practice for management of sargassum? Question 4 is about your awareness and what you need to know about the ocean best practices system. And then finally, how can your community leverage the UN decade to move the field forward? So we have about 40 minutes for discussion before we return to plenary and report on a summary of what was discussed in each group. Your facilitators today will be Emily in one group, Lee in the other, and then I would take the third group. We will have a discussion around these questions, as well as possibly exploring how we could sustain an effort like the Sargassum Working Group to work on specific assignments that leads to the best result as we address this problem, and then turning the problem into an opportunity. So over to you, Leah, in case you have any instructions related to the breakout group. Thank you.
Hi everyone, this is Leah. I'm just assigning the breakout groups now. So if you haven't done a breakout group before, you'll shortly see a notice on your screen to join a breakout group, and just go ahead and click join. And then we'll have 40 minutes to discuss. And then at the end of the 40 minutes, you'll see another notification that gives you about a minute warning that we'll be going back into the main room. And so when you get that notification, go ahead and click on it. And then we'll join for a 20-minute discussion about our breakout rooms. Okay, so I have just assigned everyone to a room, and you should be seeing it shortly.
Yes, we see it. So everyone just join, and then you'll be put in your breakout room.